Hey guys, how we doing? Time for another video here. This one's going to be a little bit about cars, so to speak, and fuel economy. Um, I got to laugh every time I hear the politicians go on TV and they want to talk about, oh, we need to improve fuel economy, and you know that young lady from New York who I'm getting tired of hearing about. They're trying to turn her into, I guess, the latest celebrity. That little girl from the Bronx, the 29-year-old or whatever. Um, oh, well, I think you should push the people to to their push them on their technology and push them hard. Well, a few things need to be understood. First of all, politicians are not engineers, um, especially if their previous job experience includes being a waitress. Uh, Secondly, I do kind of agree with her a little bit that these car manufacturers need to be challenged, do need to be challenged a little bit. The problem is, I think car manufacturers have spent too much time and too much emphasis trying to put the creature comforts of home inside of a car. When you're at home, that is your home. Yeah, it's nice if you can plug your MP3 player, your iPod, or your phone in, and you can do this and that and the other and all this junk in the car, have all this technology. But, in many ways, the young lady, the young congresswoman from New York is kind of right when you sit down and think about it. And especially when you got numbers like the ones I've got here from fueleconomy.gov. And then I also pulled the numbers on these cars originally. Now, I have 4 cars. When I looked at this, I was bored. I was just sitting at the computer last week trying to come up with ideas for a video. And, before we go any further, my channel makes no money off these videos right now. I'm not monetized, and I'm not, not sponsored, no nothing. This is just me here with my opinion on some things and my observation of some things. So, I was sitting at this and I said, you know what, let me pick a car. I want to look back at the last 30 years. I want to see where technology has gone and have they really gotten better with the fuel economy? Because that was the day when I had actually heard Ms. Cortez on the TV talking about fuel economy, and it needs to go higher, and we need to get away from the fossil fuels, blah, 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 all the shit she says. So anyway, so I chose a 1990 Chevrolet Caprice. It's a, large family sedan. It was available as a station wagon for a lot of years, and you had engine choices from a 4.3 V6. They offered a diesel in it for a few years. And then the other 2 common choices for the engines, which were the more common choices from a car that size, were the 305 small block Chevrolet and then a 350, which was also a small block Chevrolet. So anyhow, when I was looking at the numbers, I went with probably the more popular 305 to get fuel economy numbers. And I'm looking at these. It's kind of hard to see in this room. I got to get better lighting in this room, but it says 15 in the city. They average 15 in the city, 23 in a highway for a combined of 18. This is with a 305 small block Chevrolet with throttle body fuel injection. Now, for those of you youngsters that don't know, a 305 is a push rod engine. Small block Chevrolet has been around in existence since 1955, I believe. And they've done some refreshing and some things for it, and then it was around basically till the LS came out, and everybody's going to the LS these days. General Motors uses it exclusively in their cars. Now they got the LT back, and they're Everybody's getting ridiculous with pumping up the horsepower nowadays. So anyhow, that's 1990, okay? This is an old engine. Throttle body injection, by the way, was nothing more than a glorified two-barrel carburetor with a couple of fuel injectors above the venturis that were positioned above the throttle plates, or venturis, whatever you want to call them, so that when the throttle plate opened, it shot the fuel into the cylinder as you needed it. It shot more if you needed more for high revs. Now, guys, that's 1990. Okay. Let's move ahead to 2018. Now I chose a Chevrolet Impala with a 3.6 liter V6, so 2 less cylinders than the 305, and it's a smaller engine, considerably smaller engine. Now, when I looked up the specs on that engine, I think it made its peak horsepower at almost 7,000 RPM, and its peak torque was at like 5,200 RPM. I mean, and this isn't an Impala, which, you know, Chevy been back and forth, flip-flopping back and forth. A couple years it's called the Caprice, then it's called the Impala. You know, I don't know what the hell they're calling it now. I guess it's back to using the Impala now, and then they call the cop cars or the Caprice, since rear-wheel drive has a big, powerful engine. But I wanted to go with something very similar. So this is 30 years later. Now they've upped the horsepower, so the 3.6 makes a lot of horsepower. I think it's like over 300 now, in comparison to the old 305, which was maybe 170. But it also had, you know, 305. It's going to have the torque, which is what gets a big heavy car off the line anyway. So the new car is 19 in the city, 28 on the highway, and an average of 22 combined. I was looking at that because, number one, the old Caprice from 1990 has the aerodynamics of a brick. It has a big old push rod, you know, outdated, primitive, small block Chevrolet engine that didn't make no power. 305, I mean, you could build them up, but basically they were from the factory. They were turds, a lot of them. Because of the small cylinders, you had a hard time getting them to really make power beyond like that 45 to 4,800 RPM range. But to see that difference in 30 years, I mean, it's such a minuscule, such a tiny little itty-bitty difference in the fuel economy in 30 years. But you look inside that car, you've got overhead camshafts, you have, you know, let's just go under the hood. You have overhead cam, you know, a lot of your new engines have overhead cams. I'm not sure about that 3.6. I would have to look at it. But cars in general, okay? A lot of your manufacturers have gotten away from push rod engines, and they've gone to overhead cams and double overhead cams and variable valve timing. And, you know, General Motors even has their own special oil that's got to meet that Dexos spec that they want you to put in their new engines. Otherwise, you know, you could ruin the warranty or destroy the warranty on your engine. So you have to run it, even in those new Tahoes with the big 5.3 liter engine that uses 8.5 quarts of oil. Yes, to my friend that was complaining about that, that's why that oil change costs $100 or more, because it's, you know, shop's really not making any money off the oil change on them things. But it's a logo. But, you know, all the technology they've put under the hoods of these cars, I think they've focused more towards horsepower rather than fuel economy. And the fact is, when you put the engineers to work, they can come up with anything. Look what they did in the 1980s when they went to work on fuel injection. Okay? Now that, in my opinion, if the politicians had stayed out of it, or they had just said in the 70s, hey, you know what? We're not going to have you bogging down your cars and vacuum lines and stuff, but we want you to work on electronic fuel injection, and we want you to do it now. Could you imagine how much better the cars of the 70s would have been? And how much more power and more efficient they would have been? They would have ran better. You could have got away from carburetors and having to pump gas pedals and adjusting chokes and the hard starts in the winter times and all that, because they could have worked on it early on. So I think it's just my opinion and my opinion only. This is just one example, okay? And even I drove a Ford. I had put 2 other cars on here too. I drove the Ford Crown Victoria, and I also drove my first Acura was a 3.2 CL Type S. Now that ran on premium gas, so that would cost more over a period of time just because the gas is more expensive. But it got only a tiny bit better gas mileage. When I went from my Crown Vic to that Acura, I really didn't notice much of a difference in the gas mileage at all. And then I had to run more expensive gas because I could run regular in my Crown Vic when I had it. But, guys, that's just my observation of where have we gone in the last 30 years. We really haven't worked on fuel economy. So, maybe this might be one time where that little politician, that little girl up in New York might actually be right. I think they've, enough emphasis. When you can buy a race car directly from a Dodge dealer with 840 horsepower, and, and you can buy you got these, that Ford EcoBoost engine. They're putting twin turbochargers on a V6 to get 360 horsepower. I think they may have even tweaked it, and now it's up at 400 horsepower or better now. Do you really need all that horsepower in a street car? I don't know about you guys, but my daily driver right now, I'm driving back and forth to work. I have a 2009 Mercury Milan. It's just a rebadged Ford Fusion. It's big enough for me. It has enough of the tech features that I need to keep me happy. And the best part about it, that little 4-cylinder, it's 160 horsepower. But, when I need passing power, it's more than adequate for passing power. I was quite surprised. I had to pass a slowpoke one day on the way home from work last week. That son of a bitch got up and went. I was surprised at the amount of power that little engine makes. But, I would say this, the fuel economy is good, the horsepower is good, and it's more than adequate. I don't really understand why we need to have so much horsepower in a street car. And I'm happy with what I drive. And, back to the original point. Here's the thing. Gearing is the other thing that's important too. Now, when I go on the highway, because, most of my commute to work is on a highway here on the interstate, I turn on my cruise control and set it for the speed limit. And I stay in the right lane because I'm dealing with truckers that time of the morning and semis and stuff. So I just stay in the right lane. Those guys, if they can get 71 or 73 out of their truck, and make their time and get to their stops quicker, God bless them. But for me, the speed limit on that road is 65. I'm turning my cruise control on and setting it, and that's the speed that I'm going to go. And I'm going to stay out of their way, I'll just stay in the right lane, and they can get in the center lane and go around me if they don't like going 65. But I'm looking at my engine. Now, my engine makes its peak horsepower, the engine of my car makes its peak horsepower at 6,250 RPM. Now, when I'm going down the road at 65 miles an hour, my engine is barely turning 2,000 RPM on the tach. So I am not anywhere near the peak torque or the peak horsepower that engine can produce. So, I'd have to sit down and do some mathematics, look at the weight of the car, the drag, and there's a whole bunch of variables you'd have to figure out. But how much horsepower is it really taking to propel that car down the road at 65 miles an hour? Probably not a lot. I'd have to look, I'd have to see on a dyno, put the thing at 65 miles an hour and see how much horsepower it's actually making. But, you really do not need all this horsepower in these new cars. People think, I bought an expensive SUV. I have to run premium gas. No, you don't. Run what the stinking book tells you to run in it. And if it breaks, go back to the manufacturer and you say, hey, motherfuckers, I've been running the right gas in this, and something broke down, so fix it. You know, I run the right oil. I have a General Motors. You know, I have a 2015 Tahoe, and I freaking hate the fact that I got to spend $100 on an oil change, but I have to. You know, because I bought an expensive car, and I have to have oil with that stupid Dexos logo spec on it, so that I make General Motors happy. And I mean that's the thing. The public has to get more educated on how things work, and I really wish the manufacturers, the politicians would lay off the manufacturers and say, hey, you know what? Get the fuel economy a little bit better. All right? Say to the manufacturers, hey, you know what? The days of producing 800 horsepower race cars are done. Because you're going to have to put electronic speed limiters on them anyway, so that you don't blow the tires up. And who the hell wants a car doing 186 miles an hour down the frickin' highway anyway? This is not Germany. We do not have the Autobahn here. You want to take it and drive it in Germany, be my guest, and remove the speed limiter all you want. Well, not all of the new cars have the speed limiters on them, but you know what I'm saying. So that's what I would say to the car companies. You want fuel economy? First of all, stop making big trucks and SUVs, because you're never going to get that with a gasoline engine or a diesel engine. Number two, Ms. Cortez, or Miss Cortez, whatever the hell you want to be called. If you want all electric, fully electric vehicles, put the guys at work now. Okay? You and all your little buddies in Congress, get together and say to the auto manufacturers, listen, we're going to give you a reasonable amount of time to do this, but by 2050, we want every car that comes off the assembly line to be fully electric, and we want those batteries to be fully charged as that car is driving down the road. Some type of alternator or generator type system to keep those batteries permanently charged, so you don't got to plug them the fuck in. You know? I know a guy, and I won't mention who he is, as I don't want to embarrass him. You know? He was at a relative of mine's house, and he showed up in a $145,000 Tesla. And he's showing my relative, oh, get in here, check out this great big giant screen and all this technology. At the end, he says, oh, well, I hope I make it home, because it's telling me I only got so many miles left, and I got a trip almost that many miles, so I hope I make it home. Well, how about maybe if that goddamn vehicle could recharge itself as it's going down the road, you would make it home. It's $145,000. That's more than I paid for this damn house. For a car. You know? What the hell is wrong with people? That's just a rich man's toy anyway, those stupid things. I don't like those cars. But, I'll stop my ranting there. But if you want, you want to increase, you want to improve the fuel economy, they got to stop producing engines with all this damn horsepower and work on fuel economy. Sell fuel economy. Hey, you know what? It can be done. Never say never. I never thought I would see direct injected engines, but they're here. However, they need to work on the technology a little bit, because they're still carboning up the combustion chambers and the top of the pistons. So they gotta work out that. They got a few bugs in that technology that they need to work out. Fully electric can be done, because all you need is excitement voltage to get an alternator to start working. And then you could have a fully electric car that constantly charges itself as you're driving down the road, and you won't have to worry about it. Just my thoughts, man. We're at 19 minutes right there, so we're going to bring this video to an end. I thank you guys for watching. If you like videos, like I said, that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next video. Y'all have goody goody.